All right, so it's 11:02. I know that some people will still be coming in, but we are going to get started because we have lots of information to share. So welcome to our Baker and Bloom talk this morning about how to help your child discover their passion. Sorry, we're just gonna switch the screen. All right, this is just a little bit of background about me. So I'm originally from Vancouver. I went to school from K to 12 at a school called York House School. Then I went to UBC and did 2 degrees there. For my first one, English literature, and then my second one, my Bachelor of Education. So I'm still actually a qualified teacher in BC. I used to teach at my alma mater. I used to teach at York House for a year, which was really cool because I had the opportunity to teach with the teachers that taught me. And then previously, just before moving to Hong Kong, I taught at West Point Grey Academy for about 5 years. I taught kindergarten and grade 3. And some little bit of background about me is that I like doing lots of active activities. So in high school, I was on the basketball team and track and field, and that's actually where I first started kind of teaching. I was a coach starting in grade 8, and then I actually continued coaching until I came to Hong Kong. So I moved to Hong Kong in 2019, and I have been working at Baker and Bloom since 2020. Right, just a little bit of background about what we do at Baker and Bloom. So our main idea is to help children cultivate their creative literacy. So through all our programs, we use the 4-leaf approach, which was created by Renee, our founder. So we obviously focus on language arts and communication, but we also really want children to have that natural interest in learning to learn. So in order to learn how to learn, there are so many strategies that aren't just pure memorization. So here we want to make sure that we focus on instilling those different elements and teaching them and getting children to have the opportunity to practice it. We also really obviously want to foster their creativity. And something that sets us apart from other education centers is that we also value leadership and service. So we want to make sure that children don't just learn the academics, but they actually apply it and put it into action. So that's kind of our idea, our ideology at Baker and Bloom. Right. So our next slide, I know that we in the introduction on the email, it asked, what do Steve Jobs, Jane Austen, and Kobe Bryant have in common? So so yes, they all started working on their passions at a young age, but how did they do that? So the point of this whole talk today is to talk about passions and how to get your children either help them find a passion or help them figure out what to do with their passion. So I wanted to highlight these 3 kind of leaders to identify the characteristics and the traits and the opportunities that they had and how to kind of mix and match them for your child. All right, so the big question is, what is passion? So I figured this is actually a pretty easy way of just remembering what passion is because it identifies a lot of core aspects. So you first of all have to have curiosity. The next part, engagement. And the last part is purpose. Take all of that and multiply it with time, because the purpose is that passion isn't just like a little flicker of a flame. It's actually like a bonfire. So it's not just a small moment, it's long-term. So all those components together make passion. I know that one of the biggest, one of the questions that people ask the most is what's the difference between an interest and a passion? And I think this little equation kind of helps encompass it. Interest has the potential to just be only a short-term opportunity, whereas a passion is a bit more of a long-term. It's something that they have the motivation to continue with. And another major question is, well, how do I start? So for the next couple slides, I have 9 tips that will kind of help you get started. It's very simple ways most of them actually don't cost any money. So I feel like it's actually very effective ways that you can kind of get started right away. It doesn't require a lot. It's just little tips about what you can do within your own home to help foster your child's passions. All right, so tip number 1, we want to foster your child's natural talents. So one of the questions that will come up most often is, what do you, nurture versus challenge? So how do I draw the line between like encouraging and forcing? So we want to make sure that the first part about identifying a passion is making sure that the child is actually interested in that topic. So it's something that they want to do. What are your children like curious about? Where have they actually shown an interest in? So that's the first conversation that needs to happen, or at least the first part of the processing. You have to identify what your child is naturally curious about. In terms of challenging them, there is a difference between kind of encouraging and forcing. And so further down in the PowerPoint, we will be talking about that. So I will expand on that there. So tip number 2, just kind of another way to get started or helping them to find their passion in the first place is allowing them to participate in extracurricular activities. So some of the extracurricular activities could fall under athletics or the arts, or even just giving them the exposure and the opportunity to kind of try all kind of aspects outside of school. So giving them the chance to kind of to have these opportunities will help them explore different areas of interest. It increases self-confidence, and it also builds leadership skills. And sometimes by having that extra outlet, whether it's in athletics or arts, it can actually improve grades because it gives them that outlet to express themselves. So I think that's the biggest takeaway. You want to give them an outlet, something that they want to do, that they are choosing to do, and that helps them kind of fulfill themselves or feel fulfilled. For tip number 3, it could even just be help them with their homework, because this act actually allows you to gauge like your child's interests and even things that they aren't interested in, right? Like maybe your child needs help with math or those opportunities. Maybe, yes, you can stick them in programs that help them build their math skills, but you also know that it's not necessarily their interest. It's something that they just need to work on. So what are they interested in? Maybe it's creative writing. Over the summer, they could join like a creative writing program. But just having that exposure and spending time with them allows you to understand where your child is at, what he or she is interested in. And even with homework, you might discover that they have a less than traditional passion. Maybe it's something else that is unexpected. So just allowing that opportunity to spend time together, that's one easy and quick way to figure out exactly where your child is at and what his or her interests are in. Tip number 4, give them chores. So I know that I guess growing up, I had like a little chore chart where I had stickers for everything that I completed for my mom. I know that sometimes parents move away from it, but just allowing them to have chores gives them the opportunity to kind of learn these little skills and work ethic, something within the home. It gives an opportunity to maybe even reveal, like, again, non-traditional interests or talents. Maybe they're learning how to organize better. Those little soft skills are actually really useful and essential for their long-term growth. And I wanted to include this fact over here. So social neuroscientists have found that the brain has a default network that is on when we are disengaged from doing. So it's not necessarily always making sure that your child is doing something academic, doing something maybe like coding or something like that. Giving them that opportunity to have boredom will allow them to be creative. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just letting your child to do nothing with nothing. What can they create from nothing? When I was teaching in the classroom, I was actually always amazed. So this was a grade 3 classroom. I would order Scholastic's books for the kids, and they would always come in these giant brown boxes. And the kids would almost fight over it for it because they wanted to take that box home. And I was always asking them, what are you going to do with this box? Like, it's huge. It's the same size as you. And they said, I'm going to make a rocket, or I'm going to make an ice cream stand. I'm going to make a car. So they're already taking that natural curiosity. It doesn't really take much. It's literally a brown box. So they were actually able to come out with their own creative ideas from something that we would find insignificant. So I think making sure that giving the child to kind of create and fill in the blanks, that is actually a major opportunity for them to actually learn and discover who they are, what their interests are. Tip number 5, allow your children to explore communities outside of your own. So that could take maybe like community service, or having them find mentors that are outside of your own bubble or outside of your own community, by allowing them to get to know different people from different backgrounds, what different people with different interests. Just giving them that exposure allows them to realize just how big the world is and what they could possibly do. So by introducing actual people that they can talk to, it kind of brings reality to them. It's not just like, oh, I read a book about a doctor. Maybe, oh, I'm actually talking to someone who is a doctor. So giving them that opportunity to get to know different kinds of people from all walks of life, that gives them a lot more of a, it's just a bigger sense of the global reality. And then hopefully once you're able to travel, obviously traveling is a great opportunity to get to know different cultures, different customs, and letting them know that it's not just the bubble that they live in, it can be greater than that. So that's tip number 5, allowing your children to explore communities outside of your own. Tip number 6, I know, watch movies together. I know that sometimes we put on movies so then kids have some space to themselves and we have our own space to ourselves, but having that opportunity to watch movies together allows your child to kind of express what his or her interests are. Again, maybe there's a certain genre that they're interested in. That genre could help them with their own creative writing, coming up with stories, because you know that, oh, if they're struggling with writing, you think, oh, well, we watched whatever movie last weekend. Maybe you could write something about that character or create your own version of this story. Those are all talking points to springboard. So something as simple as watching movies together, again, builds that bridge, builds that communication. So it helps you have that communication with your child, and then it helps kind of potentially bridge what their interests are. I also wrote that shopping could be an interest, because I know that sometimes you do grocery runs together, you do other shopping excursions, but having your child participate in those experiences rather than just sitting on the couch, maybe saying, what do you think about this? What would you do differently? Having those conversations allows your child to start thinking for themselves and actually putting themselves in the situation rather than removing themselves from it. Tip number 7 about how to start and just have that conversation about how to build your interests and, your child's interests and passions, is to listen when they ask for help. I think this part is really focused on building that safe space and making sure that you're giving your child that opportunity to express. So listen when they ask for help. What are they actually asking for? Instead of saying, well, just try, just give it a try. What did your teacher say? Maybe listen to them. What specifically are they struggling with? So these little things that they're expressing always give huge insights for the bigger picture. Another way is maybe to read to them or to let them guide you. These are just conversation starters to help bridge and build that connection, because once you have that connection, it's actually way easier to understand what your child's interests are and where their passions lie. And tip number 8. So this one I think is one of the biggest ones. Share your own passions with them. So I wrote monkey see, monkey do, because we all know that expression, but lead by example. So if you have some kind of passion project or something that you're interested in, I think it's 100% okay to share that with your child. More often than not, they're so filled with ideas that they don't actually know where to start. not that they don't have passions or interests or creativity. I know a lot of parents say, my child's not creative. They're actually really creative. They just don't know where to start. So a really easy way to kind of start is to share your own passion with them. Talk about the mistakes that you've made. Talk about those things so they can realize, oh, you know what I am feeling is completely normal. You can even bring up stories from when you were a child and say, when I was in grade 3, I actually wanted to be an astronaut, but I actually changed my mind in around grade 6 because of blah, blah, blah. All of that gives your child the understanding, and it brings kind of the reality a little more real. It's not just starting this with this big idea of what is passion, what is an interest. It actually makes it starts it smaller so that their child actually has the skills to process and understand what to do next. Tip number 9, which is the last tip, and before we move on to the next part, give them plenty of rest and time to reflect and revise on their own. So nothing ever happens, not nothing, well, it's a lot harder for things to happen when they're forced and pushed through. So sure, you can give your child the opportunities, and if they don't actually make that connection right away, allow them that space to think and reflect and kind of make it make sense for themselves. Once that connection happens, that's when you can kind of move on to the next step. So these are just some, so everybody everyone learns in a different way. So some people are verbal and auditory, some people are visual learners, and some people are kinesthetic learners, which means they have to do the actual thing. So on the slide, I've actually included just a couple ways that you can kickstart it, like tonight, today. So for verbal and auditory learners, you can have dinner table conversations to discuss your day. So maybe make it a habit. Instead of asking, how was your day? Which ends with maybe like good. You can ask a specific question, or you can share something from your own life as that conversation starter. You can discuss your interests as a family, and you can also discuss mistakes. I think discussing mistakes is actually really important. And I know it's actually really hard because sometimes we want to have this persona that, like, you know what, I've got everything figured out and everything is okay. But I realize that even as a teacher, when you share with them sometimes, like, you know what, I one time I made this mistake, it makes you a little bit more real, and it actually helps to build that bridge. Sure, we don't have to fill every mistake, just some kind of learning opportunity, just to make your child realize that they can connect with you in that way. They have that comfort level to share when they've maybe made a mistake or have questions about something. It just helps them gain that comfort to have that discussion with you. And now that we've gone through tips 1 to 9, I'm actually going to just pinpoint 3 things about what not to do. So number 1, pressure exploration. So instead of forcing them to do an opportunity that they might not want to do, again, that's the part where it's like, where's the difference between challenge and force? Challenge is something where you're like, you know what, give this a try for the first term. We can talk about it after and see if you want to continue. Forcing them is like, maybe they're scared of heights and diving, and you're like, you're doing it. There's a difference between forcing and challenging. So we want to make sure that you're giving them time to process, and everybody moves at a different pace. The next part is to force a commitment. So I just wrote a really quick stat about how 70% of students quit organized sports by the time they're 13 because of the experience. So sometimes it's not the actual act of doing itself, it's the whole conversation that you keep cycling back to. Maybe it's forcing them, maybe it's creating stress at home. They don't want to deal with that stress. So it's not necessarily the activity, but it could be all the other stuff that leads up to it. It's very stressful. You don't want to create that. So there are different ways that we can actually, again, challenge them without forcing and keeping a safe space at home. And the last part, what not to do, don't choose their adventure. So let your child lead the journey and be their cheerleader, not their leader. So again, since in this conversation, we're talking about how to help your child discover their passion and their interests, we have to let them lead. We can influence and guide, but we're not going to be like forcing them into a channel. It does have to start with their own personal interest that leads to their passion. All right, now that we've talked about what not to do, we are going to talk about what to do. So these are the top 3 things that I would say you could do instantly. Number 1, provide exposure and opportunity. So remember that every child's brain is uniquely already primed for learning. So whether there's this natural curiosity, the point is for curiosity is to not, we don't want to kill it. We don't want to squish it down. So remember, if they have that little inkling already, what can we do to kind of give opportunities lightly? So imagine you have a match. If you want to have that flame grow for a campfire, you don't go like really hard right away. You have to just fan it gently. So by providing opportunities that are scaffolded, which are like little steps just to guide, you're fanning the flame. You don't want to just dump a whole big challenge for them that kills the flame. So we want to make sure that when you have that match, you're letting it grow into a bonfire. I don't know, something like that, just bigger. You want to give it the opportunity to grow. So be there alongside them to support them. Number 2, I think this is probably the most important one. When it comes to passions or interests, your child does not have to be number 1. It's just something that is meaningful to them, something that they enjoy doing. So we have to make sure that it is centered on the child and their feelings. So yeah, children don't have to be the best at something in order to have fun. I think the most important thing to remember is that passion and happiness, they work together. If you're not happy about doing something, it's not going to be your passion. So there's a little fine line that you have to tiptoe to make sure that that happiness, the joy of doing the activity remains and stays there. And number 3, set an example. So you can if you set an example for how you want them to be, it's a really good, you're the person that they see the most often in their lives. So by having a positive influence and a good influence, they're going to look up to you, and it's going to create that natural bridge. But there's so many things that have to happen in order for that connection to spark. All right. So the next part is maybe your child has a passion and has an interest. What do you do to nurture that passion project? So the first part is to start small. So again, with the metaphor of the flame, maybe it's like a little match that you're lighting. How are you going to fan it so that it grows into a bonfire? Start small. Figure out who your child wants to be. So again, your child wants to be, and take small steps to get there. So I actually wanted to share a little story about one of my students in Hong Kong right now. I've been teaching him for about a year, and recently his mom approached me and said that he was interested in creative writing. So we had been writing adventure stories, and he had really kind of got hooked onto it, and he actually started writing stories on his own, and he shared them with me on the weekends because we were working online, so I made it easier. So he would just share his Google Doc with me every couple of weeks, maybe 3 stories. So I was really impressed and excited. He's also in grade 3. So he's taking the time out of his personal time to write these stories that are not to do with school, nothing for school. It's not homework that I've given him. It's something that he was naturally curious about. So his mom actually told me that he was interested in joining the gifted program, and she wanted to kind of present that opportunity for him. Again, he was interested in it. She was supporting him. And for me, since I am an extra outside of school help, we're working together to make sure that we're providing these opportunities and giving him the support that he needs because he's interested. So we want to make sure we start small. Again, you're reaching out to the community that you're a part of and making sure that you have the guidance to help your child and facilitate these opportunities for your child to grow their passion. So I think everyone's quite excited and happy that he's interested in it. And most recently, he was nominated by his school to do some work for the posties, for the SEMP posties. So it's just really nice to see that it started off with literally adventure stories work, and it's developed into his own little creative project. And now he's doing, he was nominated by his school to do work for the SEMP posties. So that was like a really big win for him. And I think it just helps that we're starting small. It's not like we went from creative writing to do the work for posties. There were lots of little steps to get there, and it took a lot of time. The next part, there's a lot on the screen, so if you want to like take a screenshot, totally fine. This is just an acronym. So how do you nurture your child's passion project? This is the acronym TIME. So T stands for teach. So teach your child to have the emotional intelligence and independence to feel what they feel. So one of the worst things is that sometimes a child gets nervous about a situation and they express themselves. And instead of shutting them down and telling them, no, you're being silly. That's not how you should feel about blank. Instead of telling them that their feelings are wrong, allow them to feel that feeling and then suggest maybe some steps to get there. Because this is really important for not just right now, but in the future. We do not want to tell children that what they're feeling is not true, because that creates this dependency where they're always seeking approval. Am I doing this right? Is it okay if I'm feeling this way? For a passion project, they have to be very sure that what they're feeling is the direction that they want to go. So we don't want to teach your child how to feel. That's the first part. The second part is ask. So ask as many open-ended questions as you can. Stimulate the conversation and build a culture of conversation. So this won't happen overnight. It will just start with just small little things like open-ended questions. Like again, what I said about the dinner table, that's a really easy way to just all the families together, eating dinner together, and just have a conversation about the day, right? Just start really small. It doesn't have to be a big leap. It's just the really small little things that will start that conversation and build that culture and build that safety, that feeling of safety, so your child can start to pursue their passions. For the next acronym, L is let. So let your child feel the emotions that they feel without the fear of consequence. So listen and provide the space for them. This will allow for them to build deeper connections and help regulate their emotions. So lots of the times children, if you're not just children, actually, just everyone, whenever you feel a strong emotion, maybe anger, you have to find that way to express it. So instead of getting upset at them for expressing their frustration, hopefully, yeah, as long as it's appropriate, we want to make sure that everything is not rude, right? There's a way to express emotions. You could say, I understand that you're feeling this way. How can we solve this problem together? By allowing them by letting them know that you're on their side, that makes you feel like a teammate. It's not, it makes them feel just a little bit more supported. So by being their support system, that helps them create and share their feelings. So it's not just a one-sided situation. And lastly, K. So keep building bridges. So everything has to do with conversation and building that bridge. So I think the most important takeaway for this part, for the K, for talk, is to make sure that as your child goes through life, your role is going to kind of be different. It's going to start off being as a support. Then you're going to be kind of like that person to lean on for conversation. And then it might end up being like a mentor, or you're pushing them off into their journey. So as they go through different stages, your role might change. Your role won't really stay the same. However, the most consistent thing that is going to stay the same is that it's really important for you to be a part of their lives. So don't remove yourself from it. Don't always keep yourself in the conversation, because that will help your child feel that security. All right. And why is the starting stage important? So again, we don't want to kill the opportunity when it's a small flame. If we start and give opportunities that are too challenging, it's going to be, your child might feel a little bit overwhelmed, and they're just not going to be into it. Again, if the challenge is too difficult, they're going to remove themselves from it. So we have to make sure that the steps to get there are appropriate for the child and appropriate for the interest. So giving them the opportunity to try things and then have a conversation. How did that feel? Was that a little too intense? Did you enjoy it? What did you enjoy? Asking those kinds of questions allows you to kind of get a pulse of where your child is and how they're feeling and how far you can push them. Should you pull back? Should you push a little bit more? By having these conversations at the beginning stage, well, actually not just the beginning stage, but at the end, throughout all the stages, you need to have that conversation because it keeps you in the loop. So you understand where you can go and where your child needs to go to. Oh, right. And then so the next part is to build the range of skills. So by presenting your child with opportunities to find their passion and their interest, you're actually giving them the opportunity to build soft and hard skills. So hard skills are the technical job skills that they need for maybe a, like it's an acquisition. It's a task specific skill. The soft skills are actually really important these days, and lots of like obviously your kids are kids, but as you look to the future, those are the skills that they need to develop when they go to work and when they do a job. When they do a passion project, they are their own project manager, right? They have to be able to find and build those skills. So the hard and soft skills are actually really important. They are their own little tour guides for their passion project. So the next slide actually gives an identification of some of the soft skills. So these soft skills are things like communication, time management, teamwork, vision, organization, problem solving, conflict management, stress management. All of those things you can practice by doing all the tips from tips 1 to 9. By having those conversations, by building that emotional intelligence, by allowing them the time to reflect, by allowing them to be bored, to be creative in that moment of boredom, those are actually, you're actually giving your child the opportunities to build those soft skills. And those are all things that we can do at home. Some of the hard skills are more the technical base. So maybe like video and editing, accounting and finance. Those are the opportunities that you could provide maybe more of a specific camp if they enjoy coding, if they enjoy writing, if they enjoy maybe cooking or baking, signing them up for those technical skill-based acquisition. That's helping them discover the technical aspects that they need to complete their passion project. So we have to balance that mix of soft and hard skills. And by giving them the opportunities, those soft and hard skills will just develop and build as they go. The reason I actually wanted to talk about soft and hard skills is actually I'm going to bring it back to the 3 people we actually introduced before. So Steve Jobs, Jane Austen, and Kobe Bryant. So instead of just saying, well, they all started on their passions young, there's actually some specifics. So what do they have in common? I want you guys to think about those soft and hard skills that we just talked about when and try to link to how it helped them pursue their own passions. How did they get to where they are or they were? How do they get there? So we'll start with Kobe Bryant. So this was actually a quote just written about Kobe and his work ethic. What I want to focus on from this excerpt is that he had an innate drive and vision. Those are soft skills. So he had his mentor, like I talked about before, building out outside of your community, giving them the opportunity for people to find people to look up to. His mentor was Michael Jordan. So he was thinking, what would Jordan do? So for him, his passion, his interest was basketball. He wanted to be the best ever. He wanted to be the original, the greatest of all time. So what did he do? He had a tremendous amount of skill, natural skill, but it's not always to do with talent. It's about the hard work, what you put into it, the drive, that motivation. So again, the difference between an interest and a passion is that there is a purpose, there's a motivation, there's a drive. So for him, he had this innate drive in him, which made his interest into a passion, and he was able to have the vision. He was able to kind of see where he wanted to go and compared to where he was at, and how he was able to plan how to get there. He put in the time, he put in the hard work, but again, this was himself. It's not like his mom was like, Kobe, go outside and shoot hoops. Kobe did it himself. So that's something that made him kind of different. It's about building those soft skills. Next is Jane Austen. So why are Jane Austen stories still loved to this day, right? Normally, if you read some books that are from a long time ago, you're not really interested in them anymore. You're like, they're not really relevant. But how have her books kind of stood the test of time? Why do people still read them? Why are people still interested in them? Her stories, her characters, and the plot points that she develops, they're actually, people even to this day identify with it. That's why she's still relevant. So she writes with a lot of emotional intelligence, and she was able to also reflect. So again, those soft skills that you are building in whatever opportunities, she was able to kind of create those characters that people could identify with. She was able to write about situations that people actually had to live. So that's why she is able to remain relevant to this day. And lastly, I also wanted to talk about Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs, in reality, he was not actually passionate about technology, right? But to this day, like, where would it be without Apple? All my products are Apple. Like, because he was able to create this, it wasn't because he had this passion for technology. He was actually passionate for the arts. So, but something that he was able to develop was that he was able to acquire skill and organize. So he he was able to apply skills and apply the technical skills, but he was also able to garner his interest and put them into specific categories in order to come up with products and still remain passionate about his passions, but he was able to separate his passion with maybe a job. So he was able to compartmentalize and organize his thoughts. So he was able to pursue both his passions and create an innovative product. So the skill acquisition and the organization. And instead of just bringing up adults, I actually wanted to make it a bit more relevant and provide some opportunity, exposure about different children who have created products. So these are all kids who have created products or innovations that started out as a passion project. So the first one, for example, is Hannah Grace. So she actually started when she was 10 years old, and her company business is called Be Beautiful. So the parts that I've underlined is I wanted to focus on these. So I wanted to make sure that I communicated that her family was the one that actually challenged her to create her own line. Her parents are all shopping together, and she loves bath bombs. So her parents said, well, why don't you create your own? Like, why don't you put in the work to figure out how to create one, what products you would need, and think about what you want to do with it. So by having that conversation, by spending that family time together, she was able to kind of create an idea or come up with an idea, figured out the steps in order to get there, and then created her own company. So all of her proceeds actually go towards, so she has type 1 diabetes and celiac disease. So she donates to certain organizations that help with that. So that's the motivation. So again, with the curiosity, she's curious about maybe how to make the bath bombs, the engagement. She's fully engaged in it. It's something that she wants to do, and there is a purpose. So she's using all those elements multiplied by time, and then she was able to create her own passion project and turn it into a business. And I also, sorry, I'm going to jump back to this part. I also wanted to identify Hannah's example because her natural curiosity was something to do with bath bombs. And I know that something simple like that might not actually be the first thought in most people's mind. You're like, create a bath bomb. But that was actually her interest. It was the child's interest. So I think that's, again, really important to make sure that we think about what does your child want to do? It has to start with that in order to keep the momentum and the curiosity going. All right, and the next one, Ria. So Ria is actually involved in the tech business. So the smart cane. So it's not just, for people with visual impairments, they use a cane as a guide. So she was actually able to combine the tech aspect with a necessity. So that's where her passion came from. She wanted to change technology for the better, and she wanted to make sure that that products were distributed equally, and she wanted to, there was like a innate drive in her to create change. So that was her purpose, that was her motivation. In order to make a passion, to turn an interest into a passion, there has to be that long-term vision. And that was the reason for her to create that product. It wasn't just like, oh, well, it would be nice. She actually had this motivation and drive to do it and change lives for the better. The next example is Langston Whitlock, sorry. And so he actually started coding at 12 years old. So that was something that he was interested in. And from that experience of coding, and when he was 12, he was actually able to create, it's a app that's kind of like an Uber for non-emergency and emergency transportation back and forth. It's a safe way. So he was able to take something that is a need, make it more efficient, and that was something he was passionate about. So he's actually a Forbes 30 under 30, and he was able to kind of start that all before he actually even was the age of going to college. So that was actually a passion of his, starting from 12, and he was able to kind of get in touch with people, build that conversation, have those opportunities to bridge from just coding and just learning about coding into creating a product. So that was, yeah, so again, curiosity, he was interested in coding. He was engaged with it, engaged with lots of people, different people, to kind of build this little network of knowledge and understanding. And there was a purpose to make lives and people lives more efficient. And then he took the time to do that. All right, so on the next slide, for passion discovering opportunities, of course, this is a Baker and Bloom talk. So I think that personally, we have a lot of opportunities that that are available for children of all ages and of all interests to pursue their passions. Another way is to do passion projects. So projects, whether you do it personally at home or through an organization, that's just a really good way for your child to guide and be that person that's in charge. They're learning those project management skills. They're discovering something that they are interested in, and they are learning all these other skills in order to research, to apply, to make happen. All of that, all of those passion projects are essentially, it's just giving them the opportunities that they, it's an outlet for them to build and discover who they are. So we also actually have project management opportunities here at Baker and Bloom. Another one is experiential learning. Experiential learning is basically learning by doing. So it's kind of a new model in terms of education. Instead of just sitting there and looking at a board and just absorbing the information somehow, experiential learning is when your child is actually doing something in order to make sense of the task at hand. And educators have actually realized that when children do the work, they are more likely to remember. Even better, when they're having fun and they don't realize that they're learning, their retention is goes up instead of just learning or memorizing out of requirement. Another one is inquiry-based learning. So maybe discovering what their natural curiosities are and working together to make those opportunities happen. So maybe your child is naturally interested in soccer. Something as small as that, just give them those opportunities to go to a soccer summer camp, something outside of their bubble, so that they learn how to handle themselves in that new space. All right, and for the next one, so if we were looking for courses at Baker and Bloom in particular, because this is actually a really great way to kind of get started into a nice safe space of opportunity. If your child is interested in NFTs, STEM, coding, creative writing, reading, we have a whole lot of, a bunch of summer camps that are already created. We can also personalize and create private classes based on your child's interest. So again, I think that's something that I would actually love to talk about, because lots of parents, maybe they don't know where to start or how to start. And by just setting up a meeting with one of our teachers, you can actually communicate where your child's interests are, and your teacher will actually curate a course based on that and the skills that you want to acquire or you want your child to acquire. So private classes are a great way to make sure that the lessons are targeted and personalized, and it builds the interest in a safe space. Again, you're also meeting someone that's, you're making a connection with a mentor who can help and guide your child and be that safe person to ask questions, any questions as big or small as they may be. The next slide is this is actually a resource that I made that parents can actually download and use over the summer. So it's sorry, just wait for the slide to go. Perfect. So it's called the Discover Hong Kong Scavenger Hunt. So this is a free resource, and I think it will actually get sent out to all the attendees. So it's a scavenger hunt that uses Hong Kong. It's kind of like the classroom. So it gives the child the chance to explore and get to know the history of Hong Kong, and it gives opportunities for them to write and draw and create and brainstorm and just really initiate that creativity. This is a free resource, and the idea is that families can do it together. So if the mom, like maybe with grandparents, with the mom and dad, siblings, they can go out there and just have this little notebook and learn about Hong Kong and get to know the city. I know a lot of families may be going elsewhere, and some families may be staying here. So this is a free resource, and it doesn't go away, right? It's going to be here. If you print it out, you can always go see in those landmarks for yourself. It doesn't have to happen in the summer. But sorry, I'm going to go to the next slide. This is kind of what it looks like. It's a free resource. So this is the cover is on the left-hand side. In the middle, it just gives you a kind of a breakdown of the academic achievements that your child will learn about. And so there's history, English, writing, ELA. There's a lot of creativity that's involved because they have to do those research aspects for themselves. So it's kind of like a project-based learning opportunity, but it's a resource that you can download in the class for your home for free. These are on the right-hand side. These are the skills that your child will develop that are educational. And of course, there's a whole bunch of other soft skills that your child will have the opportunity to practice as well. On every page, there's a tip from me that reads for the parent or the child. So these are all like guiding questions or writing activities that are focused, that your child can actually choose. There's a little bit of freedom. It's not like it's dictated and forced. They have the choice to choose. And there's also opportunities for sketching. So at least they're kind of making meaning of the landmark. It's meant to be fun. It's a fun way to kind of get to know Hong Kong and see the city. And it's just also something fun for families to do over the summer. Another free resource that will be sent out is a kind of learning, it's a guide. I call it a cheat sheet, but it's just 5 tips, 5 major tips that you could just take away of how to encourage your child's curiosity and creativity and to help them find their passion. All of the tips I've actually discussed, but I just took 5 of them because I think it's easier, and these are the ones that will help create the most change in the shortest amount of time. So these 2 resources, both the Discover Hong Kong Scavenger Hunt and the cheat sheet, will be sent out, and the cheat sheet will also be able to be downloaded from our website as well. All right, so I think we have about 9 minutes for questions. I know that some questions were sent out before, but I will also check if you have any questions. Please feel free to write them in the chat. I'm just gonna look at the chat. Oops. If anybody has any questions that they want to ask about anything, please feel free to put it in the chat box. All right. Oh, perfect. So Erin, great question. So Erin wrote, my 9-year-old has a broad range of interests, yet hasn't found an area where she is more likely to excel. So I think for this one, I think it's fantastic that your child has a broad range of interests, because I think that is that's that's the first place to start. So if again, I think I do want to reiterate that it does take time. I think it's always really good to reflect back on ourselves. For me, I think I always had interests, but just kind of figuring out where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, it does take a lot of time. I guess maybe if there is something in particular that your child is interested in, the best thing to do is just to keep those opportunities and keep fanning those little tiny flames as often as you can, because you don't want to make your child do one thing. I think allowing them to have a broad range of interests and maybe choosing 3 of those interests maybe over the summer to work on, because you don't want them to only focus on one and feel like they're not confident in the others anymore, so they're not going to pursue it. So the worst thing to do is to make, maybe they have like 7 interests, focus on 3, rotate, and then until they figure out exactly what they want to do. Because if they have a broad range, which is maybe like 7 interests or something like that, by giving them too much to do, it could get confusing. So by compartmentalizing or chunking the opportunities to maybe if they have summer over the if they have summer right now over June and July, maybe like 3 activities every 2 weeks or summer camp, something like that, just so they can keep that interest. And then maybe next month 3 other opportunities, then you can kind of talk to them and say, well, what did you like? What did you like the most? What do you want to pursue? I think summer is a great time to build that inquiry and that curiosity. But that's what I would do, just because I think children, giving them too much can be overwhelming and then it gets them confused. So by keeping it kind of contained, but contained curiosity, it gives them the chance to feel the excitement to pursue it and then tell you about it after if they liked it or not. Okay, next question. What if a child tries something but then loses interest once it gets tough? Is it the lack, oops, sorry, I just moved. Is it the is the lack of grit? How to encourage grit? That's a great question, actually. So I think a lot of the time, the social emotional aspect is really, really, really important to consider, because I'm not sure what age your child is, but for me personally, I'm just going to talk about me personally. As a child, I was actually I was hyper aware of what everyone else thought about me. So I remember I used to be part of the choir and singing and stuff like that. And then when someone makes a comment about like maybe singing off pitch, like I'm not the best singer, but that kind of sticks with me. So sometimes it's those situations where maybe someone makes a comment and then it's that embarrassment and then it stops you from pursuing it. So maybe it's not necessarily a lack of grit sometimes it is, but sometimes it might not be. It might be more than that. I think the most important thing for finding or helping your child find their passion is that safe space. Because once they have the confidence to pursue that within their safe space, that's when they have the grit. Because okay, another situation. For me, I played basketball from grade 5 until university. So I wasn't best at basketball in grade 5. But if someone made fun of me in grade 5 for playing, maybe like messing up a layup or having a really ugly shooting technique, I would have felt that shame. But I had a really safe space to grow and develop. Then my parents, after I was confident in my bubble of at school with like 30 girls, then my parents signed me up for a outside of basketball league. So then I was able to meet new people. It was a little bit scary because it's all people that I don't know, and all of a sudden the pool of skill just increased, right? So I had to make sure that I felt safe in that new bubble. And then I slowly joined other communities and other groups where I was able to build that interest. And then it developed into a bit of a passion, and I learned lots of skills through that. But yeah, I think mostly it's making sure that your child feels safe in that realm first, then they will have the confidence to continue. Yeah, because if I was encountered with something that kind of stifled my confidence or killed my confidence, I would have no interest to pursue it. So I think making sure whether your child does that interest by herself, or if she joins it with others, I think just having that conversation and making sure that just checking in, oh, are you interested? If you're not interested, maybe why aren't you interested anymore? And instead of saying, well, because I'm not, try to pinpoint exactly where, because it could be something, maybe she just doesn't know how to, there's a bridge that needs to be connected, and we just need to find what that bridge is first. But I think also grit comes with time. And I think for me, like, grit is really important. I think I learned a lot about work ethic and grit and all those things that maybe school doesn't necessarily teach you. I learned through sports. So that's why I'm always like a big, I like to, when I have kids, I would love my kids to do sports, because I think it teaches a lot of life skills that aren't necessarily taught just within the classroom. Okay, sorry. One more. With a child who is laid back and taking the easy way out, how can we ensure that he or she will follow through with any passion that he or she has? I think, again, I'm not sure what age range you're talking about, but I think with everything takes time. I think if you were to ask my parents, they would probably say that I did not show drive as a child, or they would probably have thought Megan is a pretty chill, easygoing kid. I wonder what she's going to do with life. So I think with time and just exposure and opportunity, they let me kind of try things that I wanted to do. In terms of maybe if she doesn't, or he or she doesn't show the initial interest, I think maybe also saying, well, what does, let's say my friend is Catherine. What does Catherine like to do? Do you want to try some of the same opportunities as Catherine? And then maybe talking to the parent or the friend group parent and saying, oh, let's sign up our girls for this camp. So at least your child has a friend, because I think that also helps a lot. Going into something new alone is a little bit scary for kids. So going into something with a friend takes a lot of the extra social, emotional, scary stuff away, so that they can actually pursue something. Because again, there is a lot that goes into a passion. It's not just the actual action itself. Okay, another question. What if they have an interest, but it's not clear of focus? Not every passion can be a career. Like a short basketball player or uncoordinated dancer. Awesome. Yes, I think that one thing, if they have an interest, I think one thing is that we don't ever want to kill their interest. So sure, their interest might not become a career, but like lots of, I think my friends, even like all the people that are my age or adults, they all have an outside hobby activity, something that they like to do. So sure, it might not be a passion or a career, but I would never want to kill that interest, because I think it's important to keep some kind of, I think interests are really important, because it makes you feel like you've lived a very fulfilled life. Right? If you only do things because it's your job, it's not going to be as well-rounded. And I think ideally everyone wants to build a very fulfilled life, and there's lots of components for that. So I think if they have an interest, but it's not clear focus, I would just keep developing it so that they have the chance to figure out what aspects they need to work on in order to make it more focused. So if it's a short basketball player, I guess you can't really change that too much. You would just keep that as a interest, but it's not necessarily a passion. So something that's different about Kobe is that he had this drive, right? But for basketball, maybe it's an interest, but you can take those skills that you learn from being a basketball player to apply it into maybe a business job, a finance job, a teacher job, any of those things. It's about the skill acquisition and how you apply it. For uncoordinated dancer, I think like, well, you know what, you learn lots of skills, like maybe it brings you happiness, that's your outlet. I think that's a fair game too. Okay, all right. I'm not sure if there are any other questions, but we are I guess, yeah, it's 12:02, which is the end of our session here. But if you do have any questions, oh, sorry. Yes. After the Q&A, there were actually a few things. So I wanted to remind everybody that what is passion? So passion is curiosity with engagement and purpose, all multiplied by time. So again, it takes time. It's not going to happen instantly. And I think the best thing we could do is to be patient, supportive, and help build and fan those flames from an initial spark. Maybe it's not even a flame. Maybe it's like literally just a spark. You build that spark into a flame. You build that flame into a bonfire. But along the way, if their passion changes, you know what? They've learned a whole bunch of skills that hopefully they will remember and apply for the future. As we continue down, this is our contact information, just in case you were curious. I wanted to kind of pop it up over here, but I also did want to end with 2 quotes. So the first one is, your passion is waiting for your courage to catch up. So I think it's also really important to remember that kids could be scared. They're just really little. If you tell them, if you remind them, you know what, your passion is just waiting for your courage to catch up. I'm going to be there to help you along the way. Just having that support is really going to help them to feel like you are on their side and they can handle whatever comes at their way. The next quote is, passion is born when you catch a glimpse of your true potential. So again, the purpose aspect, they have to feel like there is a purpose to it. There's a drive, there's a motivation. They're going to change the system for the better. There is an interest that keeps that train going. It's not just like it's making a pit stop, just keep it going. So I think those 2 quotes I thought were really great to share with kids. If they are kind of lost, they just need a place to get started. And sometimes all it takes is just starting with a conversation. Perfect. Okay, well, that is the end of our talk, and I had a great morning with you guys. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the Baker and Bloom team, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. All right, bye everyone.